There is a story that nobody inside Buckingham Palace wanted to tell out loud. It began long before the cameras arrived, long before the gold carriages and the cheering crowds, long before the crown was placed on a head that many people believed should never have worn it. It began in secrecy, in stolen moments, in a love affair that destroyed a fairy-tale marriage and shook the British monarchy to its very core. And even now, decades later, the consequences of that story have not finished playing out. Because the woman at the center of it all, the woman who was once the most hated person in Britain, is now its queen, and the family she brought with her into that palace. They are standing on the outside looking in, carrying a last name that is both famous and powerless, attached to a crown that will never truly be theirs. This is the real story of Camilla's family, the succession, and the drama that has quietly churned beneath the surface of royal life for years. To understand where things stand today, you have to go back to the beginning. Camilla Rosemary Shand was born in London in 1947, the daughter of Bruce Shand and Rosalind Cubitt. She grew up in upper-class English society, confident and easy in her own skin, the kind of woman who laughed loudly and didn't care what people thought. She met a young Prince Charles in the early 1970s, and something between them clicked immediately. They were friends first, then something more. But Charles was a prince, and the palace had strict ideas about who a prince could marry. Camilla didn't fit the mold they had in mind, and the relationship was ended before it could properly begin. Wikipedia. Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles in 1973. Charles went on to other relationships, and eventually, under enormous pressure and public expectation, he married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981. The wedding was watched by hundreds of millions of people around the world. Diana was young and beautiful, and the people adored her. But even on the day of the wedding, even in those early years when the world was still enchanted by the fairy tale, Charles had not let Camilla go. Charles and Diana separated, and their marriage was dissolved in 1996. On the 31st of August, 1997, Princess Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. The nation's grief was overwhelming, and in the middle of it all, Camilla Parker Bowles stayed very, very quiet. Wikipedia. The years that followed were difficult for Camilla. She was seen by the British public as the woman who had broken up one of the most beloved marriages in the country's history. People were angry. The press was relentless. There were moments when it seemed impossible that she and Charles would ever be able to step into the light together. British author Andrew Morton noted that there was considerable animus between the palace and Charles over Camilla, both before Diana died and certainly after. The late Queen Elizabeth II herself was reportedly not quick to warm to Camilla. The relationship between the Queen and her heir was strained because of her. That tension was real, and it lasted for years. But time has a way of shifting things. Slowly, carefully, Charles and Camilla rebuilt their public image. They appeared together more often. The press began to soften, and then came the announcement that most people had long expected but still struggled to believe. Charles and Camilla married on the 9th of April, 2005. It was a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall, nothing like the grand spectacle of his first wedding, but it was real. And all 4 children were present: Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, Prince William, and Prince Harry, at the ceremony where Camilla officially became Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall. Wikipedia. Now here is where the story becomes important for what came later. Because from the moment Camilla entered the royal family, there was one question that everyone asked and nobody could quite answer simply. What about her children? Camilla entered her 2005 marriage to Charles with 2 children of her own, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, her children with ex-husband Andrew Parker Bowles, to whom she had been married from 1973 to 1995. Tom was a food writer, a cookbook author, a man who had carved out a genuinely successful career entirely on his own terms. Laura worked as an art curator, married to Harry Lopes, a former Calvin Klein model and now a chartered accountant, and the couple had 3 children, a daughter and twin boys. These were not people who lived in palaces or attended state banquets or had bodyguards trailing them through the streets of London. They were, by every practical measure, private citizens. Good morning, America, London world. And yet their mother was married to the man who would one day be king. So what did that mean for them? What titles would they carry? What role would they play? And most importantly, would they ever be part of the line of succession? The answer to that last question is one that cuts to the heart of how the British monarchy actually works. Although Camilla married into the royal family, her children are not in the line of succession and do not have any royal titles. This is not a matter of personal rejection or a secret decree. It is simply how the succession works. The line of succession to the British throne flows through blood, specifically, through the bloodline of the sovereign. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes are Camilla's children from her first marriage. They are not the biological children of the king. Therefore, legally and constitutionally, they have never had any claim to the throne. Today Tom Parker Bowles himself confirmed this plainly in a 2015 interview, saying simply, "We're commoners, today When Queen Elizabeth passed away in September 2022 and Charles became king and Camilla became queen consort, Tom and Laura received no royal titles whatsoever. There was no ceremony, no formal granting of status, no elevation. The question arose again in the public conversation, and Tom was asked about it directly. He joked about it on a podcast, saying that if he suddenly became a prince, Buckingham Palace gates would be stormed. He was being funny, but there was truth underneath the humor. He understood that the British public had a complicated relationship with the very idea of Camilla's family receiving royal privileges. He understood that the history was too raw, the wounds too fresh. Al. Tom and Laura are Camilla's adult children, but they are not members of the British royal family in any formal sense. They attend some events. They were present at the coronation in May 2023, and Tom's son, Freddie, even played a role in the coronation ceremony as a page, alongside others including Prince George. But there is a clear line between inclusion in family moments and formal membership in the institution. They have never crossed that line, and in all likelihood they never will. Al. When King Charles eventually leaves the throne and Prince William takes to it, Camilla will lose her title of Queen Consort. She will become the Queen Dowager, a historical title for the widow of a former king. At that point, whatever informal access or proximity her children have enjoyed through her position will shift again. Their connection to the palace will become even more distant. London world. But while the legal position of Tom and Laura in relation to the succession has always been clear and has never actually changed, the real drama has been playing out in a far more human and complicated space. Because the question of power, influence, and belonging inside the British royal family is never just about titles written on official documents. It is about relationships, trust, loyalty, and the invisible hierarchies that exist behind closed doors. And those invisible hierarchies have been under enormous pressure. Prince William and Queen Camilla have reportedly been clashing over King Charles' health and royal duties, with William pushing for the king to step back and focus on his health, while Camilla has been adamant about maintaining appearances. The tension between these two, the future king and the current queen, has reportedly been building for some time. According to sources, William wants his father to slow down and take a proper step back, but every time he suggests it, Camilla gets in Charles' ear and convinces him it would be a disaster to show any weakness. One source was even more pointed, claiming that William is furious that Camilla seems to care more about promoting herself and protecting her position than she does about protecting Charles. Yahoo! +2. This is the real tension at the heart of the royal family right now. It is not about a formal decree removing Camilla's children from a succession they were never part of. It is about something far more personal and far more painful. The question of whether Camilla's presence in Charles' life, in the palace, at the center of royal power, is ultimately serving the institution or serving herself. Royal experts have suggested that Charles and Camilla strongly disagree on some important issues, with reports indicating they will disagree, and disagree strongly, as two people who both have very firm views on how things should be handled. One area of disagreement has been the question of Prince Harry. Charles has reportedly been keen to rebuild his relationship with his younger son, but Camilla is said to believe that welcoming Harry and Meghan back into the family could backfire, with insiders claiming she warned Charles he was making a huge mistake. Marie Claire Yahoo! Harry, for his part, has not made it easy. In his memoir, he wrote about Camilla in ways that were sharp and personal. Many of Harry's revelations about Camilla appeared in his explosive memoir, which reportedly left Camilla hurt. The wounds from that book have not healed, and Camilla, according to reports from the Times, does not forgive easily. Al. Meanwhile, the relationship between Camilla and Princess Catherine, Kate, has also attracted attention. Reports from early 2026 described what insiders called open warfare between the Princess of Wales and Queen Camilla, a rift that palace aides say dates back to a moment during the state visit of Donald Trump and his wife Melania, during which Camilla allegedly appeared to shoo Kate away from a conversation with the First Lady. It is a small moment, easily denied, possibly misread. But these are exactly the kinds of moments that define relationships inside the palace. Quiet, subtle, full of implication, impossible to verify and impossible to ignore. AOL. The broader picture being painted by those close to the royal family is one of a monarchy in transition, pulled in multiple directions at once, with different factions holding different visions for what the future should look like. William and Catherine represent one future, younger, more modern, more transparent, perhaps more willing to break with tradition when tradition no longer serves. Camilla represents another kind of continuity, older, more cautious, deeply invested in the protocols and appearances that have sustained the monarchy through every crisis it has ever faced. And in the middle of all of it is King Charles himself, a man who waited his entire life for the crown, who finally received it in his 70s, who has been dealing with cancer while trying to hold his family together and fulfill a role that demands everything he has. Royal experts say that Camilla has been his stabilizing presence through the health challenges, ensuring he remains composed and confident, offering him the kind of private support that the public never gets to see. Whatever the disagreements and whatever the tensions, that support is real, and Charles has never publicly indicated anything other than gratitude for it. Fox News. What makes this story so compelling is that it contains so many layers of grief and history and human complexity that it resists simple conclusions. Camilla's journey from the most vilified woman in Britain to its queen has been extraordinary by any measure. The fact that her children grew up watching their mother be publicly hated, watching her navigate that hatred with a kind of dignified stubbornness, and then watching her finally arrive at a position of extraordinary honor, that is not a small thing. Tom Parker Bowles has spoken about what the coronation meant. The family pulled together through difficult times, and their bond of togetherness was important. There is love in that family, real and evident. But love and legal standing are different things, and the succession has always been about legal standing. To remove someone from the line of succession would require an act of parliament. It is not something that can be done by royal decree alone. This is a constitutional fact that applies as much to anyone else as it does to Camilla's family. The idea that Charles signed some secret document stripping her children of succession, rights they never possessed, is simply not how any of this works. The British monarchy is constrained by centuries of law, and those constraints exist precisely to prevent any one person, even the king, from reshuffling power through personal decisions. AOL. What is true, and what matters, is that Camilla's family occupies a genuinely unusual space in British life. They are close to the center of power without being of it. They carry a name that is now forever connected to the crown without carrying any of the legal weight that connection might seem to imply. They attend coronations and celebrations and family moments, but they are commoners, as Tom himself said, and they have always known it. The real drama here is not a decree. It is a life. It is the story of a woman who spent decades as Britain's most controversial figure, who endured levels of public hatred that would have broken most people, who held on and waited and worked, and who finally arrived at a position that her own children will never inherit. It is the story of those children, Tom and Laura, who grew up in the shadow of a love affair that changed history, who were defined publicly by their mother's choices before they were old enough to make choices of their own, and who have nonetheless built lives of genuine substance and independence. Tom once said of his mother and stepfather, "She married the person she loved, and this is what happened." There is something quietly profound in that simplicity, not a fairy tale, not a scandal, just two people in love and everything that came after. AOL. The crown sits on Charles' head. The title sits with Camilla. And beyond the palace gates, Tom Parker Bowles writes cookbooks and Laura Lopes curates art, and they live the lives they have built for themselves, connected to royalty by blood and marriage and history, but never quite of it, never quite inside it, watching from a unique distance that no one else in the world quite occupies. That is the real story. It does not need a secret decree to be extraordinary. It already is.